Thank you for joining us to build a better understanding of the requirements of the policies, practices, and procedures. This presentation is in regard to Ohio Department of Education and Workforce's request for updated policies, practices, and procedures as a new process in Ohio. It is also important to note that the new information provided today is the most current information available, and additional guidance will be provided with the release of the 2025-2026 Special Education Profiles. What is the difference between the special education profiles and the special education ratings? The special education profile is released in two phases. The first phase is released in December or January annually, which includes indicators with required actions. The second phase is released in May annually, but does not include indicators with required actions. All of the data from the special education profile is included in the special education rating. The special education rating, which is released the following October after the release of the profile, is based on the results from the May indicator findings and systemic improvement of the indicators with action items. For more detailed information, please visit www.education.ohio.gov.
The first phase of the special education profile release takes place each December or January and includes 14 different indicators with possible required actions based upon a district or community school's performance compared to the annual targets set forth by ODEW. For the 2024-2025 school year, indicators 4A and 4B will not have a required action. Indicator 14, although it also does not have a required action, is included in the first release phase to provide districts and community schools to make a plan prior to the end of the school year to gather data from graduates after high school. The second phase of the profile is released in May. The indicators in the second phase do not have required actions. However, the results from these indicators impact your district's special education rating, which is released in October. Indicator 3 addresses the participation rate, proficiency rate, and proficiency gap results for grades 4, 8, and high school in reading, language arts, and mathematics. Indicator 5 is the result of students with disabilities' least restrictive environment. Are your students with disabilities instructed alongside non-disabled peers? Indicator 6 and 7 address preschool least restrictive environment as well as results from the child outcome summary reports. Indicator 18 is new this year and replaces the previous Indicator 15 for timely corrections of noncompliance. Essentially, make sure you complete all required actions from Phase 1 of the previous year's profile.
There is often confusion about what is needed for the policies, practices, and procedures versus the state model policies. Districts and community schools are required annually to adopt special education policies and procedures, although most choose to adopt the state's model policies and procedures. However, each LEA has the option to adopt their own as long as it has the same minimum requirements in the state model policies and procedures. These differ from the PPP requirement of the special education profile required actions, as the model policies and procedures provide the what and the why, but are not tailored to any specific district or community school's needs. The practices are unique to each district or community school to describe how the policies and procedures will be enforced within the LEA. To better understand the difference between policy, procedure, and practice, let's define each and identify where to locate evidence.
What is a policy? A policy is a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government, party, business, or individual. It is a set of rules, principles, or guidelines that an organization or individuals follow to guide their actions or decisions. It acts as a blueprint or roadmap for achieving specific goals or objectives. Where do you find your policies? Look at your adopted board policies, typically found on your district website, as well as special education model policies and procedures document if the district or community school adopted these.
What is a procedure? A procedure is an established or official way of doing something. It contains a series of steps taken in a specific order to accomplish a task or a goal, and they can be very simple or complex. For your procedures within your district or community school, you could look at the Special Education Model Policies and Procedures document, your district Special Education Handbook or Administrative Guidelines, and the Ohio Operating Standards and Guidance.
What is a practice? A practice is the actual application or use of an idea, belief, or method as opposed to theories related to it. It is decisions made by districts on how procedures will be carried out. Practices are also how you are monitoring that staff are consistently implementing the procedures. You can find your practices in your district special education handbook or administrative guidelines. Keep in mind, no later than September 19th of 2025, your district must post their practices on the website. Next, we will break down each indicator with required action and what the department is looking to be included in your district procedures and practices as identified on the rubric you should have received after the initial submission of the PPP.
Graduation and dropout are included in the same indicator analysis and improvement plan, and a district or community school could have a required action in one indicator or both. Indicator 1, graduation, focuses on the requirements for graduation and should include how students earn credits, monitoring progress towards graduation, and identifying appropriate reasons for exemptions. Indicator 2, dropout, focuses on what to do when a student becomes credit deficient, aligning appropriate interventions to prevent dropout and documenting reasons students with disabilities drop out in comparison to students without disabilities.
Indicators 9 and 10 are predictors for significant disproportionality in identification. It is important to note that these indicators look not only at disability categories, but also at disability categories by race. Clearly defining procedures and practices surrounding how evaluations are conducted can limit the over-identification of students. The district or community school policy, practices, and procedures should refine or develop procedures and practices that include the process, assessments, eligibility determination, and the qualified team members that must be present. Although some of these are outlined in the operating standards, the district or community school must clarify these to their unique setting.
Indicators 4A and 4B are predictors of significant disproportionality in discipline and should be reviewed and used to revise practices prior to the identification of significant disproportionality in discipline. The procedures and practices regarding student discipline should be reviewed for students with and without disabilities. Developing a comprehensive system to monitor and address student discipline is the foundation to ensure students are being treated fairly and provided the proper supports. This includes how and when to conduct a manifestation determination review, functional behavior assessment, and behavior intervention plan, as well as placement decisions related to discipline.
Significant disproportionality in placement refers to the least restrictive environment for students with disabilities. In your district's procedures and practices, you need to lay out your plan for ensuring children with disabilities are educated with non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate. Each educational agency needs to provide a continuum of placements and have a way of guiding IEP teams in determining a student's LRE.
Indicator 11 addresses the district's child find process. Be sure to address how timelines are met. What are your procedures when a request for an initial evaluation is made, and how do you obtain consent for the evaluation? Are you providing parents and families with options for how they can participate in meetings, such as virtual, in-person, phone call? The last bullet on this slide mentions timeline exceptions. We recommend that you work with your district EMIS coordinator to clearly define decision rules and the use of non-compliant outcome codes.
Beginning the year of the child's 14th birthday, Districts in Ohio are required to begin the transition planning process. Transition programming requires the use of age-appropriate transition assessments to identify a student's preferences, interests, needs, and strengths, also known as PINs. Districts and community schools need to identify who will be responsible for transition planning and describe the transition services that are available, as well as who will be providing the service to the student. The Indicator 13 checklist should be used to develop, serve, and progress monitor a student's post-secondary goals. Keep in mind, transition planning is a collaborative process and should include parents, community partners, programs, and other agencies that will serve and support students with disabilities.
When updating and submitting PPP for the indicators with required actions, the state model policies and procedures should not be submitted. Rather, the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce is looking for the district or community school's specific procedures and practices related to the identified indicator. These should be very clear as to how your district or community school will implement each to improve outcomes for students with disabilities. When uploading the documents into the monitoring system, it is imperative to clearly identify which policy, practice, and procedure is for which indicator. If a district or community school does not do this, the PPP may be returned for revision. Please keep in mind, there are many submissions that must be reviewed, and your help is greatly appreciated. This can be done by including a table of contents with specific page numbers, highlighting, or flagging individual sections. Each indicator with a required action must have a submitted policy, practice, and procedure. It is not required at this time to submit the PPP for all indicators without a required action, but it is strongly encouraged to continue this work for overall improvement.
Many questions have been asked about what should be posted and where the information must be posted. Take into consideration what families and students need to know for a student to be successful when determining what and where to post information on your website. What information do they need? All links that are submitted as a part of the required activities must be live links and accessible to anyone outside of your organization. There are many requirements under the law as to what must be posted, so it is important to ensure you have the correct information located in a way that all stakeholders can view what is needed. Please remember, even if your PPP were approved in February, you must still provide a link to the information as a required activity on your improvement plan.
Please do not wait until the last minute to complete this important work. Start by developing a team to revise and/or develop your policies, practices, and procedures. A team-based approach helps to guide decisions and provides more clarity. For more personalized one-on-one support, please contact SST11 or register to attend our in-person help sessions offered on May 20th, May 21st, or June 3rd. You do not need to come for the entire time, but we do ask that you please register for the session or sessions so that we can plan to have the appropriate staff available. As a final reminder, all evidence of activity completion for your improvement plan, including the updated policies, practices, and procedures, is due no later than September 19th, 2025, following the guidance in the indicator manuals.
We appreciate your time in reviewing this presentation. If you have additional questions, you can contact us via phone or email at sst11@escco.org. Please like and follow us on social media, where you can find SST11 on Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube.